We talk a lot about the pressure on South Asian youth on Unspoken Minds, but what about the grandparents who are sitting quietly in the back corner of the house somewhere, far away from everything they've ever known? Today, I am joined once again by Dr. Kirti Jain, a family physician with over 35 years of experience treating South Asian families, who opens up about mental health crisis that nobody in our community is talking about, and that is the silent suffering of our elders. Hi, how are you today?
Good morning. I'm great. How about you? So
I'm
happy
really
to be back.
Yeah, I know. Thank you so much for joining me again. We had a great conversation a few months back. It was the first ever episode, so you were the one who got this journey started. And so thank you so much, and I'm really excited to have you back to talk about a completely different topic.
I'm absolutely honored and I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah, I think there'll be a lot to talk about for this topic. I mean, you've lived a lot of this personally, so I'm excited to get like a more personal angle. So you've been serving for over 35 years, working in Michigan. And so the first thing I want to ask is what have you observed about the mental and emotional health of elderly immigrants, like people, like grandparents who moved here into the US later on in their lives, either just to be close with family or to start a completely cha different, like new chapter?
Excellent, excellent topic you picked, Arnav. I'm so happy that you decided to talk about it. This is mostly something that goes unspoken and unseen and unheard in most of the families. These are the family members who had entire life. It's very different when you come as a young person, you are coming here, you're excited, you're building new life, you are building your future and you're looking forward to it compared to when these elderly parents, when they come, they had their whole life, their identity, their rituals, their community, their surroundings, their temples, their friends. They leave it all behind and they are here without having an actual closure or ceremonious so-called funeral or anything. They just show up here and then now they're supposed to like it here. When they come here, they have all the physical material comfort, but they really lack their community, their relatives, their friends, and their identity that they built over the years. That's a huge, huge, huge trauma to their being, their soul, their hearts.
And so how do you think that differs between an older person and someone who's younger like me? Like if I were to move to a completely different place, how would my experience be compared to like my grandparents who moved somewhere else?
So, first of all, because we are in this Western world, we do talk about depression and anxiety and trauma, and we freely discuss it and seek help. Our depression, we actually can say that I feel depressed or I feel anxious or I feel upset. However, this is a generation where the word depression was never used in their lives. They did not know what anxiety or depression mean. So these people, when they feel sad, down, isolated, or withdrawn, they come with symptoms of somatization, which means they have symptoms of body aches, generalized fatigue. They get test after test after test, not finding any real reason for their pains. They're not able to sleep at night. They're not able to concentrate. There is a whole world called pseudo dementia. It's extremely common in people when they are extremely worried and anxious and not able to concentrate. They often misdiagnosed as dementia, but in reality, this is from their mood and mental health issues.
What do you think is the cost of uprooting? Like, when they're leaving something behind, you mentioned like community and stuff. So when they're leaving all of that behind, what is that loss do to the person psychologically? And how does a family's like expectation that the person should be grateful or happy for what they have and what they have been given moving into a new place? How does that make it harder for the elderly people to actually express their feelings to their families?
You know, when the families are brought here to America from India, it requires a lot of mental energy and financial burden on families. So when they're brought in, the middle generation, let's see, it's your parents' generation, they believe that the grandparents should feel thankful. They should have gratitude because they were brought here and now they're taken care of and they're provided all the material comfort. They were given a nice room and they're given all the material things. However, with gratitude simultaneously exists this isolation, the anxiety, the restlessness, the insomnia, the feeling of aloneness. And when that happens in the same family household where there are children, there are pets, there are their own grandchildren, they're all living in the same family, it does not get unnoticed. For grandparents, when it's trauma, it doesn't come as a trauma, it comes as a feeling of overreaction, feeling of being super sensitive, feeling of being angry at smaller things that are not necessarily requiring this big blowout, but because they're intrinsically traumatized and upset and sad about the move, it creates a ripple effect on the children and grandchildren. Grandchildren are now watching the grandparents silently sitting and suffering. However, due to language barrier, they're not able to communicate, they're not able to interact, and they learn the pattern of suffering in silence compared to opening up and having a dialogue. Sometimes having this mentally, I shouldn't say sick person, but mentally upset person makes the middle generation, the sandwich generation, the parents' generation, emotionally, they're stretched thin. So now they're irritable, they are upset because they're caring for their young ones, helping them build their career, their education, yet they're also taking care of physical and medical needs of their parents, which is your grandparents' generation. So in the process, they somewhere missed taking care of their soul, taking care of their own heart. And even though it starts with their own health, let's see the middle generation, if they took care of their own health, it will help them taking care of their parents and their children. Now, these grandparents' illness affects their own children and their grandchildren. So we believe it's extremely important that we take care of these grandparents, and you bring really amazing and important topic that nobody talks about, and I really applaud you for taking care of this topic.
Thank you. And yeah, it is a pretty big topic because it doesn't really just affect the older people, it's also affecting their grandchildren and stuff. And I think there's a lot to be said about culture. And you mentioned the language barrier. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that? Because the culture is so different between our grandparents' generation and our generation. There's decades in between that. And there's so much that has changed. Do you have anything that you would like to talk on that?
Absolutely. This actually brings back a recent event I attended. I attended an event where our friends, they were celebrating life of a grandfather, and these kids spoke so beautifully about their relationship with granddad, that how they spend endless hours playing a card game with grandparents, or grandfather taught calculus to grandkid, or grandfather can teach certain kind of specific skill that they have, that grandchildren can have common language in that. Sometimes it doesn't have to be actual language, but there can be common hobbies that can be found. There are also common rituals that are done in families that can be passed down generations to grandkids. So we have to provide connection, a bridge between generations, instead of treating everybody their own separate islands. We might have more burden on the middle generation, that they have to take extra effort to connect their kids and their parents in a way that goes beyond the language alone. Activity, help grandkids learn cooking from grandmas, help grandson learn certain sports from grandfather if he's able to. And there are many ways, music, there's so many universal languages that go beyond actual spoken language. But we have to create a bond. Instead of asking simple sentence, how are you doing? You actually connect with them at a deeper level.
Yeah, it's really important for that connection to go both ways as well. Because when a grandkid sees their grandfather struggling, that also creates a burden on them. And it maybe not as much of a burden, but they feel that and then they're like, why is this person struggling? And then they feel that more emotionally just because they are someone who's a lot older, someone who they respect a lot more. Like in India, we like touch their feet to like show that respect. And so like we do really respect them a lot. And I think that creates like a what is going on in their mind kind of thing, which plays a really big role in their well-being as well. My follow-up question to that, though, is what do you think families can do? And what should they be looking out for in these elderly patients?
So clearly, we can only do something if we know what's going on. So first we have to look for signs. And signs of depression in elderly, like we talked about, are different than a typical adult or a kid. So look for signs of isolation, withdrawal, um, too many non-specific physical complaints, memory issue, which is sometimes it comes with aging, sometimes it's also called pseudo dementia. That's part of depression. Once we find out and once we diagnose at a family level, we integrate this particular family members in decision making, include them in activity instead of doing things for them, make them feel seen, heard, and respected. If you can do that as a family, it's great. Otherwise, get clinical help. You take these elderly grandparents to doctors, and doctors have system in place. These days in doctors' offices, every patient gets depression screening, and depression screening scales are different for geriatric patient versus normal adult patient. Once it's diagnosed, there is counseling available, there is medical prescription help available. Now, at a family level, at a doctor's level, but there is also at community level, there is something that can be done. And I really applaud our own Mr. Lalit Sethi and their team. It's called MIX, Michigan Indian Community Center. He's working on building one until we actually have physical structure, the community center. He's already starting the community center events, and they're meeting once or twice a month where all the seniors, the grandparents, they get together at a specific location. It can be a community hall, it can be at a restaurant with very nominal price. And they eat lunches together, they'll have their tea together, they will have Indian singing, the dances, the songs, the jokes. And that makes them feel a sense of belonging. Their issues are similar to other grandparents. They're, they can relate the loneliness with their other grandparents who are in this community. So even though as a family we like to include them in our activity, there is no way we can understand their grief and sorrow because we are really not in their shoes. But people of that level, that age, that generation, they connect beautifully to each other. So having this community center and connecting with each other on a non-religious setting. In a religious setting, again, our culture is so divided in different religion, different rituals, different allowed and not allowed things. So with this neutral community center event, it's really bringing them close together. And I've seen some of these events, and I'm really impressed and excited and looking forward to having actual physical mixed Michigan Indian Community Center where um, our grandparents can actually enjoy it more and build their own community where there is sense of belonging and they're not missing their back home as much because now they're building their community here.
Yeah, exactly. And that's actually really great to hear about because there's obviously like Jewish community centers and other like community centers that have had so much benefit to the community. And so it's really great to see an Indian community center so close to home being brought up. And we've talked about this in previous episodes, or I have, about a sense of community and creating a sense of community, especially in younger people. But I guess the same thing can be said with older people. You know, finding commonalities. And by doing that in the South Asian community, in the Indian community, is so great because there's so many similarities and commonalities that they can all relate to. And like in high school, for example, you meet people who have similar clubs and activities and hobbies as you, and then you create friend groups. And so now they're doing the same thing, but at a much older age with their peers. And they're going to these places to talk to each other and find similarities so that they can have a sense of community outside of the home. Because at home, first off, things can be stressful. And also, you might just not find enough things because you're hanging out with them all the time, right? You might just end up like losing things to connect with, right? Whereas when you're
Yes.
meeting new people constantly, you're you're always building new connections and new conversations and learning things and learning new perspectives, which is super interesting. And I think that's great for community and just getting like a sense of belonging in a place.
Yes, community is extremely important where you can find gardening group, you can find singing group, you can find dancing group, you can find but similar activities and where they can connect with each other. So I think we are on right track, and I'm very hopeful, and we are going to do great for our next generation because you are spreading awareness. I'm so proud of you. For 17 years of age, you are beyond your years for thinking about topics that most of us should already be working on. But good job. Great, great, great job.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I really appreciate that. I'm trying to bring light to this topic, and I'm hoping more people see it and it impacts more people coming up with these topics. It's a lot of fun for me, and yeah, I just hope that it has a really big impact. The other thing I wanted to ask is, in our last episode, we talked about validation and validating feelings. How do you do that in someone who's older without coming across as maybe rude, or just how do you make that more comfortable for an older person versus a younger person? And can you even validate an older person's feelings?
Absolutely. So, validation simply means you are understanding that person's point of view. And that is true to any form of therapy. This is part of therapy. So, basically, when you are going through an experience, the reason you have stress is because how you see things is not how I see things. Two people are seeing things at different level. And that is extremely common because everybody feels or experiences things from their own background. Now, if it's not same, you are supposed to understand that person. You are supposed to validate it. You are not agreeing with it. You're not saying that that is correct, but you at least need to understand their point of view. And that can be very similar to a 90-year-old versus 9-year-old because basically you are understanding where they're coming from. This is extremely important, especially when the grandparents are coming from India and they're in a different culture, different food, different language, different lifestyle. They are feeling certain way. We need to validate it, and that is going to help everybody. Sometimes we don't have answers for it, but sometimes just to be heard, understood, and seen goes long way.
Yeah, it's
Because this
showing
this
respect.
world is plaid, it's black and white. There's no all white or all black, and this is what we need to understand if we are trying to help somebody.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I really thank you for joining me again here today. Is there anything else you would like to talk about really quickly before we wrap this up?
I would like to thank you again for giving me this opportunity to talk about it. And I'm hoping that this little talk goes a long way and helps, even if it helps one family at a time, help grandparent that will have positive ripple effect in rest of the family. And that will be worth our time and energy. So I'm happy to do this
Yes, of course. I mean, yeah, Rome wasn't built in one day. You have to go day by day and one
one
person at a
step at a
time.
time.
And so that's the most important thing. I hope to connect sometime again in the future.
Always a pleasure. Thank you, Arna.
Thank you again for listening to Unspoken Minds. For every grandparent who crossed an ocean to be near their family and then quietly lost themselves in the process, this conversation is for you. If this episode resonated with you, continue this conversation at home with your family, peers, or mentors. Follow Unspoken Minds for future episodes, and remember, you are not alone, and it is okay to speak what often goes unspoken.